The Brazilian Grand Prix returns to the F1 calendar this season after its absence from 2020 due to the global pandemic, and it returns under a different name, the Grand Prix of São Paulo. There's also a difference in the race weekend, as of course it is the host of the third and final sprint race on a Saturday of this season. Now, going into the São Paulo Grand Prix, Max Verstappen still holds the lead in the Drivers' Championship. The Dutchman has a 19-point advantage over his rival, Lewis Hamilton. In the Constructors, the gap is even smaller, with Red Bull just a point behind Mercedes after impressing in the last few races. So anything can happen this weekend in both championships, and the results of the Grand Prix in Brazil will be so important to deciding who will be victorious come the end of 2021. So here is everything that you should be looking out for in Brazil this weekend. Before we go any further though, just a reminder, hit the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with everything we do here at GPFans. But now let's get into what you should be watching out for on track this weekend. Interlagos is seen as a circuit that fits well with Red Bull on paper. Helmut Marko, Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, among others, have all confirmed this. This is mainly due to the fact there are many bends and very few long straights. In addition, the Mercedes engine seems to be less able to withstand thin air, which could also work in Red Bull's favour. Of course, we've seen in the United States and Mexico that race speed of Red Bull is also very good, especially when it's compared to the likes of Mercedes. Remember just how good Red Bull were on the yellow stripe tyres in Mexico just last weekend. All in all, it seems that Christian Horner's team have the advantage on paper, at least when it comes to the circuit in Brazil, and that is bad news for Lewis Hamilton. If the Briton still wants to have a chance to take this year's driver's title, he will really have to find a victory this weekend. Verstappen, in turn, could do the business quite comfortably in São Paulo and extend his lead over Hamilton even further. The title fight between Hamilton and Verstappen is approaching its blood-curdling conclusion, and the drivers can no longer afford to lose points unnecessarily. Equally tough, though, that means for Perez and Bottas in the, sister cars of the two main drivers, because it's all about getting the victory and the maximum points for the championship leaders Verstappen and Hamilton. After all, the difference between first and second place in a race is 7 points. You don't want to miss those points in the standings at the end of this season. This means that the teams will have to rule with a very heavy hand over Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. Now, if Bottas or Perez are in first place and the teammate is somewhere in the middle of the pack, then of course they will give the other driver the victory. But as soon as we were discussing before Mexico that, say, Sergio Perez is out in front of Max Verstappen in the lead of the Grand Prix, well, expect team orders to come into effect and expect Perez to pull over and allow Verstappen through. Now, that's far from ideal for the Formula One fans, but at this point in the season, it's something that Verstappen and Red Bull need to see happen. Alpine is currently 5th in the Constructors' Championship, followed by AlphaTauri in P6. Now, the teams have both racked up 106 points this season so far, putting them technically in a tied situation. Now, in these situations, the number of race wins is counted, and seeing as Esteban Ocon took the top prize in Hungary earlier this year, AlphaTauri hasn't yet won a race, and so that means that Alpine are therefore edging their rivals in the Constructors' Championship. However, Alpine has had some very tough races recently and only managed to score 3 points in the last 3 outings. Now, AlphaTauri have scored 22 points in that same period. There is therefore a good chance that Alpine are starting to lose their hold on 5th in the Constructors' title, and AlphaTauri, led by Pierre Gasly, could overtake them by the end of this weekend. We alluded to it earlier, it's the third and final sprint race that was scheduled for this season, taking place in São Paulo. Now, the race weekend will kick off on Friday, as we've seen before, with that free practice session earlier in the day, and then later on in the afternoon, we get into the qualifying session, which determines the starting grid for the sprint race. On Saturday, the second free practice is the first thing to take place, followed by the sprint race itself, which determines then the starting grid for the race. On Sunday, it's finally back to business as usual with the main race, of course, the Grand Prix of São Paulo. Now, after the sprint race weekend, Formula One will meet again to discuss how they're going to apply the format in 2022. But we do know, as we discussed on the GPFans Stewards Room podcast, there will be 6 races next season that will have this format. If you like it, if you don't, it doesn't matter at this point. F1 seems like they're going to test it even more next season. Let's hope that at least at Interlagos, it gives us the thrills and spills that we had at Silverstone as well. What else should we be looking out for this weekend in Brazil? Let us know in the comments section below. And of course, hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our coverage across this weekend's São Paulo Grand Prix. And remember to get onto Instagram and Twitter as well, at GPFans Global, for all of the live updates and all the breaking news from the world of Formula One.